Hey, welcome back to the second tutorial on the node map. So if you haven't seen the first, you should see this one. This one will be about story events. So those are the events, you have the random ones like this, and you have the specific ones like the campfire and the shop. These are what we're going to be looking at now. We'll be using this tutorial event that we set up last time. So to remind people of how that looks, if you didn't just see the other one, in data and node map and map events, we created this tutorial event which currently looks like this. But we will change this from an arena event to a story event instead, and now we can choose a specific story event from our story encounters. And here you have various ones to choose from. Like if we choose this this tomb encounter, and now if we go here, we will go into this tomb encounter here, and here you can see how the story events look. So they have a description, they have various options. If you choose some of the options, then you will have things happen. Here I'm raiding the tomb, I'm gaining a curse card, and I'm also gaining an artifact. And then you have another button for leaving, and then we're back on the node map and we can continue from here. So that's the general setup of how these work, and I'm going to show how to create a new one. So for this, let's just add new rows to the story encounters data table. You can again create your own data tables for this if you want to keep that organized in different ways, and keep my defaults here, whatever you prefer, but here they are, and we can see how they look. So we can look at one of these. So the rest one is fairly simple, or we can look at the tomb, which we just saw here. So you can see the structure of these events, and you'll notice that you'll have tomb and you have tomb A and tomb B. So these are the ones that are results of the various buttons that we click within the event. We'll look at that a bit more. You'll see that it has gameplay tags. So this is, if you recall from the last video, is used by the nodes and the map events here. If you are choosing between multiple different encounters instead of choosing a specific encounter, then you might have tags for these events that they are looking for. And you can see that in the default story event here, which is choosing random encounters, it is looking for encounters within the story encounters table, and it is looking for those that have a common rarity. So you can see that only the ones that don't have like an A or an B at the end have the common rarity, and rest and merchant don't at all, while these ones do. So this is how we can filter out and decide what events are chosen between, since we don't want the merchant and the rest event to show up in our random story node. We just want our the story events to show up. So if we go back to the tomb, so you have that. So you have, and then you have the description. That's what shows up when you open it up. You have the image, which is the background image. You have the encounter options. So these are the various buttons that you can click, which are, as I mentioned in the last tutorial, are really cards. This is the same structure as you will see in the DT cards table. Each of those are really a card. There's data here that is not used by the story events, which is used by cards. You don't need to have like a portrait for each button, for instance, so which makes it, a bit more cluttered than maybe what would be ideal. But I found it's most useful to keep these two things identical, so that if you know how to use one of them, you know how to use the others as well. You don't have to have two different structures for all of this stuff, because we still use quite a lot of the stuff within this card struct here. Let's see. Yeah, before we start making our own, we can look at like the first option here, or which one did we do again? This one, where we're gaining an artifact and a curse, right? Raid the tomb. That's the one we chose when I demonstrated earlier. You can see that's the only thing here really. and so that's set in the name. You can add description if you want to have something when you hover over it. And you have card effects. So if we choose to raid the tomb, what happens is that we're adding a new card to a pile. We're adding a specific card. We're flagging this as specific, and we're adding the Nightmare Curse card to our deck. Then we are adding random artifact, which is the artifact we got. Then we are showing our reward screen, and then we are going to another story encounter. So this is how this particular event is set up. We will create a new one now so that I can more specifically describe what we are doing. So let's start with a new encounter. Again, like I've said before, it's often good to just copy an existing one and just modify that, but let's start from scratch for the purpose of the tutorial. We'll take this new story encounter. I'll call this tutorial, and we can add this to our random encounters, why not, as a gameplay tag. And we want to have then a description. So first we have to figure out what type of encounter is this, and we want to have like a background image. I just imported, let's see, an image here under textures and node map. So I added this new one showing the myth of Androcles, which we'll be using for this encounter. So we'll go back to our story encounters, and then we'll search for Androcles, and there it is. And now we have enough. So in our map events here, we can go to our tutorial event, have the story, and then we will look in, this one we don't need, that's from the previous tutorial. We'll choose our tutorial event, and now we are going into this event here. We can't do anything here, we can't even exit it, but we have an event that works. Great. Next, we will want to add a description to our encounter. So yeah, I guess I'll have to demonstrate my abysmal creative writing skills here. Come across lion with a thorn in its paw. Yeah, that's sufficient, right? So now if we play, this will appear. And then we will need to have some options for what we can choose within the encounter. So we can start by adding an option here and a description for it. So we can just, and that's in the name, is where you get what is written on the button. The description is actually what you get when you hover over the button for these buttons here. So you can now just ignore him. And with this story encounter system, if you have an encounter or an option which is just completely blank, there are no card effects and nothing, then it will just exit the event. So you can see that now. So you got this ignore him event, and we go back to the map. So if you just have one where you want to leave, then that's the simplest thing to do. Then another thing you want to do a lot is to go to another event. So we can have an option here where we remove the thorn. So let's add that. Let's see, maybe we want this to be the first event. So I'll just drag that up here. The thorn, I don't think I had a dot after those, so let's just keep it like that. Now for this simple button, we can leave most of this blank, but we're gonna need a card effect. We're gonna need an effect that tells this button that we want to open another story event. So we'll add a card effect, and we'll choose the effect class here. You can see that we have plenty to choose from, but look at the ones that start with story. You can use any kind of event for these, and some of them work just as well on the node map as they do during a combat encounter. For instance, if you want to add a card to your deck, since the deck exists, when you are on the node map. But many other things don't make sense, like damaging a specific minion or something, since there are no minions on the node map. And then you have those that are marked with story, which will generally be extra useful. So we can find the one that's here. So you have this one, which is just called story and encounter. And this is the one you want to use a lot for transitioning to other encounters. So we don't have another one yet. So let's create a new one. We'll duplicate this one so we can keep the portrait and everything. And we'll call this tutorial like A. This is how I've chosen to order it. That's like the first option, the top option would be A, the second one would be B, then C, etc. And then if you have other options within those, then I keep marking those with 1, 2, 3. If you want to keep the same structure, up to you, of course. That's completely arbitrary. But there we have tutorial A. So this would be after we have removed the thorn. So we don't want to have the option to remove the thorn again. We'll just have a leave option here. Can't write. And we'll have no description at the moment and no rarity for this, because we don't want to randomly encounter the second step in our encounter. So we'll clear this. So now we have this second option here for tutorial A. If we go back here, so we have removed the thorn. And for this, we have the card effect story encounter. And for this, we have to specify the encounter we are going to. So let's say story encounters and tutorial A. If you're curious, like, how do I know what kind of data is used within this effect class, you will of course just have to look within the effect class and see what is used. And you can see that in the story encounter effect, used data is utilized here. So we need to specify or use that. So we'll take tutorial A. And now if we choose this event and we remove the thorn, then we go to our second page here where we can leave. Now that event is not very exciting, so let's have something happen if you remove the thorn. So if you go to the story encounters again, and if we have then, so there are two ways to do this. You can, like, when you pick the option, then something happens, like you get a reward, or you can have, that you go to this second story encounter first, and then you can press a new button, and then you get a reward. We can try both and see which looks better. So we want to give a reward for removing the thorn, and we can just add a blank card effect and do all of that stuff, or we can look at one of the places where I know that is already used. So in the tomb encounter, I know that the first option here, lane offering, that gives you a card. So we can look at the card effects here, and the first one is add new card to pile. So we can copy this so we don't have to set up all of these defaults manually. So I'll copy this over to tutorial A, and then tutorial, and then when we remove the thorn, so you have the second one here, which is the let's see. Yeah, here are the card effects. So you have the story encounter, and then we can give a reward, and the ordering shouldn't matter in this case, I believe. I'll double check that when we test it. So we're adding a new card to the pile. One of those, we're adding it to the deck, which is the pile we're adding it to. We have some flags as well here, some gameplay tags that tell us this card effect, that we want this to be skippable, and we want to get a specific card. So we want to get the specific card which is in our used data. All of this you can look into add new card to pile to see which of these are used and how. But this is how it's used here. So we're getting like the blessing card. Maybe we can get some other from this lion. What makes sense to get from a lion? Not sure anything like the frenzy card. Sure. So it gives you that. And now we should be able to test this out. So we can remove the thorn, and this gives us a card. And then we get to the next event and we leave. So like story-wise, maybe this doesn't make too much sense for the player, because why are we getting a card immediately after clicking that? We want to tell the player probably that there's a reason they're getting a card. So let's change it up so you get the reward after you get the second event description. So we're going back to our story encounters then, and tutorial A, and then we'll add something to the description, like the lion thanks you and offers you a reward. I'm not able to be creative at the same time as I'm making the video, is quite apparent. Okay, so we'll take this add new card, copy this, we'll remove it from here, and we'll add it to something here instead. So we'll just take accept the reward and leave, and we'll have a card effect there. This will be our add new card to pile effect. And now if we try this, we remove the thorn, it thanks you and offers you a reward, we accept it and we get this reward, and then we actually don't leave. We just keep getting new rewards. So if you, or like I said earlier, if there is no card effect on a button, then we'll leave. But if there is a card effect, then it will not leave the encounter unless you tell it to. So we can do that by adding a blank story encounter. Story encounter effect. And now we can remove the thorn, we can get this frenzy, and then we leave. And then we can keep going on our merry way. So those are probably the main things I wanted to cover. One more thing is probably to talk about like having requirements to choose an option. So we can go into here and you can only remove this thorn if you meet some requirement. So you can do this and add like a use rule for this. So you can say that there is like a stat costs, and coins is actually a status which is held by the card player. So you can say that it costs 50 coins for whatever reason to remove this thorn. And now if we hit play, we can see that this is grayed out and we can't use it. So we need to have some coins for this. We can go to let's go to the main menu, and we'll pick Manny the Mannequin because he starts with some gold. And then let's see, here we are. And then we actually have some gold, and we see that we paid 50 gold. You should specify that on the button to the player so they understand what it costs. But then we were able to choose that option. So that's how you work with use rules. So you can of course add your own custom like use rule blueprints if you want to have more fancy specific requirements for what options you're allowed to choose within your encounters, and also what costs happen. Though of course a cost like this could also be implemented as a card effect where you're modifying the coin status. So there are many ways to do these different things. So the various like included encounters that are here, I made them specifically to demonstrate quite a wide array of different things you might want to do with encounters. So I recommend looking through those, like playing through the story encounters here, testing them out, and then looking at how they are implemented is probably the best way to learn how to create your own encounters. And if you're still struggling after that or want to try to achieve something particularly ambitious, then as always, then just hit me up on the Discord, which you can find a link to in the description, and I'll do my best to help you achieve your goals there. So I hope this was useful, and I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of story events you guys create. Okay, bye.